Hey, Alexa here. In this video, I'm going to give you an introduction to NPM. We use NPM in our Node.js projects to manage packages and stuff like that. But in this tutorial, I'm going to give you a code tour of an NPM project, explain what all the files do, and we're going to practice using NPM packages. First, what is NPM? You can think of it as primarily two things. It's a library of thousands of packages published by other developers, but it's also a command line tool to easily install and manage those packages in Node.js. So NPM, it's going to host all the packages, and it's also going to let you manage them and install them in your own project. And it's very similar to pip if you're familiar with the Python ecosystem. Pip is used for managing Python packages, just like NPM is used for managing Node packages. We're going to start by creating an NPM project, and in order to use NPM at all, we have to initialize an NPM project on our computer. So I'm going to open a terminal application and navigate to a folder of my choice. So I'm going to go into my desktop, into my code projects, and I'm going to make a directory called NPM test. And then I'm going to cd into that. If you don't really know these Linux commands, you can just use your computer's GUI to make this folder yourself. And you want to open this folder in a code editor, so I'm going to use VS Code. So now we have this empty directory here. And what we want to do is run the command npm init inside of this empty directory. So I'm going to go back to my terminal, make sure that I'm inside this directory here, npm test, which I am, and I'm going to run npm init. That's going to initialize a project for us and prompt us a bunch of times. So it's going to ask what our package name should be. I'm just going to leave this as the default name of the folder. So to do that, you just press enter, version, you can leave that, description, a quick npm demo. Entry point, we're going to leave this as index.js, but you might also see the entry point for a npm project be main.js or something along those lines, but I'm just going to leave it. Test command, we can leave that. Git repo, we don't need that. Keywords, author, you're going to put your name. License, you can leave that, and it's going to ask, is this okay? We'll say yes. And then if we look back into our code, we actually see there's a file here, and we're going to talk about this later on. But first, let's actually install an NPM package or module. They're kind of synonyms, so what we want to do is go back to the NPM website here. You can just type in NPM, search for it, and it should be like the first thing that comes up. But you want to go to the search bar here and type in the name of the module you want to install. So for this demo, we're going to install a module called Figlet. And here is the package, it looks like. And Figlet is basically a package that allows you to create cool ASCII art in your terminal. So it'll print out something like this in your terminal when you run the code. But basically, there's two ways to install this. One, you can use the npm install command, and then you just put the name Figlet after it. So let me show you this. You would do npm install Figlet. That would be one way. And then the shorter way is to just do npm I Figlet. I stands for install. Also, a rule of thumb here is to make sure you copy the installation command from the actual page on NPM, because sometimes the package name will differ from the actual command you need to use to install it. So I'm just going to click on that to copy it and go back to my terminal, and it's the same command, so I'm just going to press enter. Okay, so it's going to say we added that package successfully. Going back to our NPM project, one thing we want to do before we start coding is we want to create an index.js file. So I'm going to click new file and then index.js. If you remember from that prompt command. Basically, the index.js is like the entry point for our application, so we always need to create that in an NPM project. Now I'm going to give you guys sort of a code tour of this NPM project and explain what all of these files mean, because you see, we do have some new files that were generated as we installed Figlet. Let's start with the package.json. So this was generated after we ran the npm init command. And as you can see, it's a JSON file. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's basically a way to format information. And this lists all the information about our package. Let me just make this bigger. It's going to also list our dependencies. So as you can see here, our dependencies are Figlet because that's the package we installed. If we installed more packages, they would all appear here. You can see like the author is also here somewhere. Yep, me. This is just all metadata about our project. Moving on to package.lock.json. This is a really important file. It basically outlines the dependencies that your dependencies have. So when we installed Figlet, it is a dependency for this project, as you can see in the package.json. We need Figlet in order for this project to work. But Figlet also has a bunch of other things it relies on, other node packages. And basically, the package.lock.json is going to keep track of all of those other dependencies that some of your node packages will have. This file is very important because it allows you to replicate your project anywhere. Let's say you uploaded this project to GitHub. If someone were to clone this onto their machine, they would want this package.lock.json file, and they would have to run the command npm install. They would probably run the command npm install, and that would download all of the dependencies for the project. So it would basically look through this package lock and install everything in here. Let's talk about the node modules folder. This is where the actual package content exists. This is where the useful JavaScript functions are. You know, when we install a package, what we're really doing is just installing fancy JavaScript functions that allow us to do these cool things like print ASCII art in the terminal. And all of those functions are going to exist in here. We have a Figlet folder, and we have like all these things. I think the actual code will be somewhere here. Yeah, it looks something like this. But the node modules is generally a large folder because if we install multiple packages, it gets bigger and bigger. And this means that it should not be tracked by Git, and we don't want to upload it to GitHub because it's very large, and also it's kind of repetitive because we already keep track of all of the dependencies and stuff in our package.lock.json. So to replicate it, we wouldn't need this node modules folder. We would just need this package.lock.json. To ignore the node modules folder, we put it in what's called a git ignore. And we're going to talk about that now, but first let's create a git ignore. So to do that, you just do .git ignore. These files are necessary for NPM, the git ignore files, because they specify files we don't want to track or upload to GitHub. So that would include our node modules folder. And I'm pretty sure that would be it for this project. But typically I like to use this git ignore generator, and basically you can like put in certain things like node, I'm on a Mac, I'm on NPM, actually that's not a thing, but if you just create, it's going to generate a git ignore for you, and you can just copy and paste this into your project. And it's really, really helpful because it gets really all the files you need to have ignored. Okay, now that I've given you a code tour, let's talk about how we can actually use the module we installed called Figlet. So I'm gonna like just exit out of these and go to the index.js, because remember, this is our entry point. This is where majority of our code will actually exist in. In order to actually use our packages, we have to import them. And importing makes the package functions available to use in a specific file. So generally there's two ways to import. You can use ES6 syntax or CommonJS syntax. ES6 is a newer version of JavaScript, and it's very similar to the JavaScript that runs in the browser. Remember that the JavaScript that's on Node is slightly different from the JavaScript that actually runs in your browser. And we're able to use ES6 in Node if we enable it. First, I'm just going to show you what the ES6 syntax looks like. So I'll say ES6 here, and what you would do is basically say import Figlet, and then from Figlet. And that is what ES6 syntax looks like. The CommonJS syntax looks like this. So const Figlet equals require Figlet. So basically these two lines of code do the same thing. It just depends which one you want to use. Just so you know, CommonJS is the default for Node, but I'm going to switch to ES6 because it offers some new features. And to do this, I'm going to go into my package.json and just add this thing at the bottom here. We would just put a comma after this and do type and set that to module. And now we should be able to use this ES6 syntax. So I'm just going to delete this here, and that should be good to go. And another really cool thing you can do with ES6 import is you can import specific functions. So you're able to do this with destructuring, which is unpacking values from arrays or objects and make them distinct variables. But if I wanted to import a specific function that the Figlet package offers, what I could do is say const, and then TextSync is actually a function from Figlet equals Figlet. And I would just have this line here, and now I have access to this text link function. Alright, now let's finally actually use this module. We can look at the docs for instructions on how to use these packages. I definitely suggest you guys do that before you try to figure it out yourself. But as you can see here, this is like simple usage. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and use what's right here because it uses TextSync, which is the function I imported. So I'm going to go back, paste this in, and honestly, this is good to go. I'm pretty sure we can save, and then we're just going to go back to our terminal and actually run this. So we'll say node index.js. This is how we run Node files, and press enter. And look, we get the text boo in cool ASCII art. Wow, that looks really nice on my terminal. But yeah, you can go ahead and tweak this if you want. You can say maybe like my name. Run this again. And that's awesome. But basically you can tweak stuff here, you can change the font and stuff, but I'll leave you to do that. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned a lot about NPM and now are very competent in how to explain an NPM project to someone else. But thanks for watching. As always, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more, make sure you subscribe. See you guys!